What's going on, UFC fans? Welcome back to the MMA Business Hour. And in today's episode, we're going to break down all the fights that have been announced for UFC 290, Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez. This card is good stacked. It's going to be amazing. We have Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja for the 125 belt. Bo Nickel comes back against Tresean Gore. We have Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. We have Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price, Sean Brady, and Jack Della Maddalena. We have Davison Figueiredo versus Manel Kape. These fights are absolutely loaded. This card is going to be the best of all the fights. I'm going to give you my early predictions and some bets I'm liking, even though the odds aren't out yet. But stay tuned. We got a lot of great content coming for you guys. Let's go! Prediction breakdown of Volkanovski versus Rodriguez at UFC 290 for International Fight Week. Let's get started with some of the prelim fights. Actually, one of my favorite fights of the night, Sean Brady versus Jack Della Maddalena. Man, the UFC certainly did not do Sean Brady any favors in his return after that loss to Belal Muhammad. Jack Della Maddalena has been absolutely destroying people. He's a young fighter, 26 years old, from Australia, on the up and up. He's won his last 5 fights. He is an absolute specimen. So this fight's going to come down to, is Jack Della Maddalena going to be able to stop the ground game of Sean Brady? I think Sean Brady's only path to victory in this fight is to get a hold of Jack Della Maddalena, get him down to the ground, take his back, and try to look for a choke. We saw against Belal Muhammad, Sean Brady's hands did not look that good. His gas tank did not look great either. So it'll be, we'll see how he comes back after, that kind of loss. He was 15-0 going into that fight, and it looked like the moment just got the best of Sean Brady. He really didn't show up on fight night. His cardio wasn't good. His wrestling wasn't good. Belal Muhammad is an absolute beast, so, it could just be Belal is just that much better than Sean. But this will be a real test for Sean Brady. Jack Della Maddalena is an absolute savage. But if I had to make a prediction right now, I think Jack Della Maddalena might be the one to come out victorious here. If we take a look at this guy, man. Oh my God. He hasn't lost since 2016 at Internal MMA. He lost his first 2 pro fights, but then he's really started to come into his own. This is a big step up in competition for him as well. Pete Rodriguez, Emma, Danny Roberts, Randy Brown, not the best fighters in the UFC, that is for sure. So Sean Brady has definitely fought the better competition, but we'll see how he bounces back after that loss. Right now, I'm going to go with Jack Della Maddalena for now. But I'm going to keep watching tape over these next couple weeks, and I'll do another prediction video closer to the fight night. All right, on to the next fight. We have Dan Hooker versus Jalen Turner, the spider, or the tarantula, my bad. Okay, Dan the Hangman Hooker, he has been pretty much horrible his last, 6 fights. He does not look like the guy who was, having those great fights with Paul Felder and Dustin Poirier. But man, loss. He beat Nasrat Haqparast. It's not that great. Then he got lost super fast in the Islam fight. He got smoked by Arnold Allen. And he came up with a big win against Claudio Puelles with a nice body kick in his return to 155. But man, Jalen Turner is a beast. He's got great length. He's a really good fighter. He has really turned it around since the beginning of his career. He had some ups and downs early in his career. But look at that. He puts together a 3-fight win streak, then loses to Luque, then he lost to Frivola. Then he had a bunch of canceled bouts, and then he went on this tear. 4 wins in a row. But he lost this showed that Jalen Turner is for real. That Matus Gamrot fight was absolutely amazing, and a lot of people thought he won that fight. But I do agree that he lost a split decision, but he was in the fight the whole time. I like Jalen Turner to get it done 100%. I think Dan Hooker's time in the UFC is, coming to a close. He's got a couple fights, left in him, but the only thing going for him, he's kind of a recognizable name right now, and he puts on pretty exciting fights as long as you don't put him in there someone who can grapple. And Jalen Turner is definitely not going to look to grapple in this fight. He's going to look to stand and bang with Dan Hooker, so it should make for a really exciting fight. But I think Dan Hooker is going to get smoked. Jalen Turner, I'm looking for a Jalen Turner by finish. I'm going to check out those odds once they come out, but I'm definitely going Jalen Turner for sure. On to another prelim fight, Robbie Lawler versus Nico Price. It's crazy that Robbie Lawler is fighting on the prelims, but this should be a really fun fight. They're both like to stand and bang. Nico Price is never in a boring fight. He's not the best MMA fighter, but he's also fighting Robbie Lawler, who's 41 years old. Jesus Christ, Robbie Lawler. But I think Robbie Lawler, this could be a fight. If Robbie Lawler goes out and loses this fight, this could be the last fight in Robbie Lawler's career. I mean, the dude loves to fight. He doesn't really look his age. He looks like he's in his late 30s, but to be in his early 40s is pretty remarkable. And if we take a look at, Robbie Lawler's last 5 fights, there's nothing to write home about at all. He lost to Brian Barberina, who is, not great. He beat Nick Diaz, who looked absolutely terrible. He lost to Neil Magny, he lost to Colby, he lost to Ben Askren, he lost to Rafael dos Anjos. His last win coming before the Nick Diaz fight was Donald Cerrone all the way back in 2017. So Robbie Lawler is long in the tooth. He's 41 years old. I can't bet on a guy who is 41. I'm going with Nico Price to win this fight, probably by a stoppage. So Nico Price does not look great either. He had that draw with Donald Cerrone, which was a really fun fight back in 2020. Then he lost to Michel Pereira, who's looked really good as of late. He's really coming to his own. And then he beat Alex Oliveira, who is, another older fighter who's not very good. And then he lost to Phil Rowe by punches. So Nico Price is another guy who is, his time in the UFC is coming to an end, I think, for sure. He's 33 years old. He puts on good, exciting fights, but he is definitely not on the upper echelon of talent in the welterweight division. They have him ranked 30th on Tapology, and they have Robbie Lawler all the way down at 72. So I'm going Nico Price here for sure. I'm going to check out the odds as they get closer. Maybe Nico Price by finish could be a really fun bet. Okay, then we go on to the main card, and this main card is absolutely ridiculous. The first fight being, if this opens up the card, I don't know what to say, because it's going to come with an absolute bang. Robert Whittaker versus Dricus du Plessis. I am not convinced that Dricus is ready for Robert Whittaker. Dricus was getting lit up by Derek Brunson, and he ended up winning the fight, but Derek Brunson looked his age, and he really gassed out in the second half of that fight. But, Dricus has come along quite well in the UFC. Currently a 19-2 record, fighting out of South Africa. He's got a lot of finishes. He's got wins over Brad Tavares, who's, not very good. Darren Till has looked absolutely terrible as of late. I think he's lost like 5 or 6 out of his last 7. Derek Brunson looked super old in this fight. He's pushing 40, and he looked it in that fight. He's got wins over Trevin Giles, Marcus Perez, Brendan Lazar. Dricus is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but Robert Whittaker is on a whole nother level. I think Robert Whittaker is going to win this fight easily by finish. That's another fight I'm looking to bet on, Robert Whittaker to win, because it's only a 3-round fight. Don't forget that, guy. So, that's it. If this was a 5-round fight, it would be Robert Whittaker 100 out of 100 times, I think. But since it's a 3-round fight, that's better for Dricus for sure, but Robert Whittaker, between the kicks and the elbows and the punches and the ground game, he's so unbelievably good. I think he absolutely dominates Dricus. I think he walks through him for sure. I love this bet for Robert Whittaker all day. You can book that. Take that one to the bank. And then we have Deiveson Figueiredo versus Manel Kape. I thought Figueiredo was going to move up to 135, but the fight is at 125. I mean, he struggles to make weight in every fight. It's getting ridiculous at this point. Deiveson, move your chunky ass up to 135 because you can't make the weight. And I bet you he misses weight again. But he does, since it's not a title fight, he gets the 1 pound allowance at 126. But let's take a little closer look at this fight. Deiveson Figueiredo has fought most of his fights over the last 2 years versus Brandon Moreno, and they went back and forth. He has lost twice and beat him once. And then we have Starboy Manel Kape fighting out of Extreme Couture. Let's take a little closer look at Manel Kape, who has won 3 out of his last 5 fights, and he's won his last 3, with wins coming over David Dvorak, Samagulov, and Ode Osborne. Had a few counsel bounce, including Alex Perez. He's also has losses to Alexandre Pantoja, who's fighting for the belt coming up. So, I don't know. I mean, I think Deiveson Figueiredo is definitely going to win this fight. This is a huge step up in competition for Manel Kape. He's never fought anyone with the power and strength of Deiveson Figueiredo. He has won his last 3 fights one by decision, one by punches, and another by a flying knee that caught Ode. Manel Kape is a good fighter, but I just don't think he is on the level of Deiveson Figueiredo. If Deiveson Figueiredo does have trouble making weight again, we could see him move up to 135. And there's a ton of amazing fights for him at 135. So this 125-pound division is looking thin once again, especially with some of these guys looking to move up to 135. But I'm taking Figueiredo all day. Okay, and then we have one more main card fight before we get into the main events. We are going to see Bo Nickel fighting Tresean Gore. Bo Nickel's wrestling is the best probably in the UFC, especially at 185. He is an absolute savage. He went to Penn State and was one of the best collegiate wrestlers ever. And he's fighting Tresean Gore, who I think, did he win? I know he was on The Ultimate Fighter. And he's a decent fighter. He's not a great fighter. You know, I think they're throwing him another can. He's probably going to take down Tresean Gore and dominate. Let's see. Tresean Gore is currently ranked 70th by Tapology. He's got a current 4-2 record. He won by guillotine choke, which was an extremely impressive performance against Josh Frem. He lost to Cody Brunage by stoppage. He lost to Brian Battle. And then he had some wins in the Ultimate Fighter against Ryder Newman and Gilbert Urbina. I mean, he's a very green fighter in the UFC too. We'll see how this fight goes, but I don't expect it to last long. I think Bo Nickel is going to absolutely come out with the victory quite easily. He's going to take him down. Tresean Gore's only chance is to keep this fight on the feet. And Bo Nickel does get a little overzealous at times with like really big kicks and strikes, and he ends up like falling on his ass. But he's fighting out of American Top Team, and they have some of the best fighters in the world, like Poirier and Jorge Masvidal. So he's training with the best of the best all the time. And I think Mr. Vicious, Tresean Gore, is going to get dominated. Bo Nickel by submission all day. And then we get into the co-main event, which is an amazing fight at 125. We have Brandon Moreno versus Alexandre Pantoja. Pantoja has looked great as of late, but Brandon Moreno is an absolute savage. He is a monster of all men, especially at 125. I would love to see him move up to 135 and see if he could hang there. I know he's a little smaller of a guy for sure, but he is a dog for sure. He is one of my favorite fighters. I love watching Brandon Moreno fight. But Pantoja is coming off of wins against Perez, Royval, and Cape. He did lose a recent decision back in 2020 to Askar Askarov, who's a mediocre fighter at best. And then he won against Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell's also just so-so at the 125 division. But he's got 3 big wins, all in pretty dominant fashion. But I do think that this is another big step up in competition for Pantoja. I'm going Brandon Moreno here. I think Brandon Moreno's shot selection, his ability to fight anywhere the fight takes place. He's got great takedowns. He's got great kicks. He's got great wrestling. He is the cream of the crop at 125, and I think he's going to maintain the champion at UFC 290. And then the main event of the evening, we're going 5-minute rounds for the 145 strap. We have the interim champion Yair Rodriguez versus the champion Alexander Volkanovski, who, in my opinion, I think he lost the Islam Makhachev fight, but just barely. Just barely. His cardio is unbelievable. His takedown defense is so good, and his counterpunching is elite. But Yair Rodriguez is one of the most unorthodox fighters in the UFC. He's got crazy elbows, vicious spinning attacks. His kicks are some of the best in the UFC. He's got amazing takedown defense. He's just an absolute elite fighter, and he's an absolute maniac. He is batshit crazy, and I love watching him fight. He is the epitome of what a fighter is. I can't say enough good things about Yair Rodriguez. And if he won this fight, I would not be surprised. But Alexander Volkanovski just seems like on another level right now. I think his path to victory is taking this fight to the ground, just like Max Holloway did, kind of mitigate some of those crazy attacks. Because if Yair wins, that's what's going to happen. He's going to catch him with one of those crazy high kicks or spinning back fists or the spinning elbows or the one elbow he has is just like so devastating. It's like a kind of like a jut elbow. But man, this fight is going to take my money. Take my money. I think Volkanovski wins this fight if he can stick to the game plan by counterpunching and then taking Yair Rodriguez to the ground once he gets a little too overzealous with his strikes. Volkanovski is he is the best pound for pound fighter in my opinion. Not only did he fight up a weight class at 155, Islam Makhachev is a weight bully at 155. He barely made the weight. They had to get the towel thing out. I mean, it was a whole spectacle. And then he got accused of, rehydrating with the IVs. So I think Islam's days at 155 are numbered as well. And not to mention, he's probably 5 inches bigger. And, if there's another round in that fight, I think Alexander Volkanovski finishes Islam Makhachev. And if they fought again, I would be laying some juice on Alexander Volkanovski. But back to this fight. In order for Volkanovski to win, he really has to be aware of the elite striking of Yair Rodriguez. He throws crazy combinations from all different angles. He's super unpredictable. So to win this fight, I think a boxing match with him would be a mistake. He needs to take this fight to the ground and grind him out and use his great ground and pound to get a finish or a possible submission. But Yair's going to bring it, man. I wouldn't be betting this fight at all. They're both extremely durable guys, so maybe if you want to, do a bet like over 2.5 rounds, over 3.5 rounds. If this went all 5 rounds, I would not be shocked at all. They're both extremely durable. And, some of the best fighters in the world, and I think they would both do extremely well if they moved up to 155. I think they'd both be top 10 fighters at 155. But for me, I'm going Volkanovski. So here's a quick rundown. We're going Volkanovski, Moreno, Nickel, Figueiredo, Robert Whitaker, Nico Price, Jalen Turner, and Jack Mandalena. There's our picks. Let me know in the comments below what you guys are thinking about these fights, or if you like any bets. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel. We're approaching 4,000 subscribers. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you guys on the next fight. Peace!